as lawyers, our entire profession is built around the concept of communication, whether maybe arguing, but ultimately conveying a message through communication. And yet, as business owners, sometimes this is our biggest struggle. That's why I'm super excited to have Stephanie Vaughan-Jones on with Moneypenny to talk about the top communication tips you need to know. Moneypenny is the UK's leading provider of outsourced telephone and web-based communications to businesses of all shapes and sizes. Stephanie is their head of business development. And the funny part to me is, obviously, you'll notice she has a British accent, and she is currently in the UK now. Normally, she's in America with us. So it's always funny because Moneypenny gives you that answering service from the very nice British accent for the most part. So I'm super excited to have Stephanie with us today. How are you?
I'm really good. I'm super excited to be here with you today as well.
There we go. All right, so we're going to dive into the top communication tips you need to know. But before that, I want to talk about our last episode. Last week, we had Mark Rockwell on. Mark's an attorney and a coach by trade who talked to us about how you achieve your goals by facing them. FACE being an acronym, focus, accountability, core values, and execution. So really good chat for any of the law firm owners interested in, I guess achieving your goals, which I hope all of us are. But just a really great conversation. And some of the stuff that Mark talked about really was setting the right expectations with your communication. So I'm excited that we're doing these episodes back to back. So with that, Stephanie, we're talking about top communication tips, but tell us a little bit more about you. I know you're the head of business development for Moneypenny, but who is Stephanie Vaughan-Jones?
Oh gosh, well, I wanted to elaborate a little bit more on what you said about us being the UK's leading answering service. Actually, my journey with Moneypenny, gosh, I've been with the company for 13 years now, and it's been an incredible journey, and I would say quite a big part of who Stephanie Vaughan-Jones is, really. I headed out to the US. We acquired a business, Moneypenny, Voice Nation, a couple of years ago, and then the pandemic hit. So we've now fully gone over to the US, and it's been an absolutely awesome opportunity for me to put my business development skills into raising our brand within the USA. And as for Stephanie Vaughan-Jones, that's me.
There we go. Awesome. Yeah, and it's so interesting to me. We always talk about how the expectation gets set so well in that first phone call. You know, like when somebody answers the phone and they don't want to be there, immediately the client doesn't want to hire your firm. And so I think it's so cool to get that British accent on the phone. You know, especially when you're that go-to higher end law firm in there. It's a different experience. And obviously, you all, the people that answer the phones for you all do a great job. I just think it's such an interesting thing for a firm that could really tie into that uniqueness by having great answering.
Yeah, I mean, again, just to go back a couple of steps, actually, we have an amazingly strong foothold within the legal industry within the UK, which we have now brought over to the US. And, we look after law firms all over the world. In fact, we look after over 1,000 law firms. Many of them we do fully outsourced switchboard for, but also overflow support. And, Moneypenny as a whole, I mean, we handled 20 million communications last year for over 21,000 businesses, and that was across the UK and the US. So we've had to adapt to new ways of communicating, and it's such a hot topic, especially now for us and many, many other businesses, actually. Since the pandemic hit, we've had to reevaluate how we communicate with our clients, our suppliers, our employees. And this is our forte at Moneypenny. And we don't just have to think of our clients, as a whole. We have to think about their clients as well, because that's who we're representing. And actually, we're growing at 15% year on year. And this wouldn't be possible if we hadn't kind of future-proofed our business in the way that we communicate. And actually, for many firms as well, we know that agile working is key and flexibility is key. And that's not just with our employees, it's with our customers as well. And if you'd have said to me 2 years ago, you'd have your whole workforce from the US and the UK working from home, I'd have said never in a million years would that ever happen. And we had 2 weeks to give everybody a laptop and to get everything installed on those laptops. And our IT team were working tirelessly throughout the evenings to make sure everybody could get home and deliver a wonderful service from home. And I always say really a really important question to kind of ask yourself when you are reevaluating your communications is kind of looking at how you would walk in your customer's shoes. And I think stepping back and looking at your business and experiencing it as your clients would makes a really big difference. And one thing that always stands out to me is a client. I saw him for years at events and on the circuit, and he used to say to me, Steph, we don't need you. We answer all of our calls. We're totally fine. I think he had about 15 members of staff at the time. And he was off on long-term sick. And he phoned me about a month into his sickness, and he said, Steph, he said, I've been trying to get through to my business and I can't get through. And he said, I'm experiencing what my clients are experiencing. Sign me up. And that's always stuck with me, because experiencing his journey in his customer's shoes really kind of told him the story. And there's so many different channels now. We've got websites, business cards, Facebook, LinkedIn referrals, word of mouth. So having the same journey and wowing your customers through all of those channels and being able to deliver a consistent service, you know, it can be a challenge. And that's where we're here, not just for law firms, actually. As I mentioned, we look after many different sectors and have lots of amazing relationships with many reputable brands. So yeah, it's looking at all the different ways that you can communicate with your clients and tracking everything as well. You know, we all spend thousands of pounds on marketing. I onboarded a client the other week, and he actually had 15 telephone numbers. And when he checked them all, a few of them are going into oblivion and weren't even being answered. And now we're capturing actually double the calls that he thought he was getting. And he's safe in the knowledge now that everything's been tracked. But all these little things really make a big difference. Yeah, we've noticed a lot as well, high demand out of hours. So actually with our live chat service, 46% of chats to our law firms actually happen in the evening or at the weekends. And clients actually see a 20% increase in web conversions since using our live chat service. And we can talk about communicating all day long, you know, it's what we do best. And it's really interesting to see really all of the different scenarios. And you know, we used to be able to plan our resourcing from typical call volumes. Like, we know that in the legal sector, Monday's by far our busiest day. But actually, businesses are now so open to outsourcing, we can't predict sometimes what we're doing. We're having to allow a little bit more downtime, because I think businesses are using us more. You know, they're not just using us as overflow, they're fully outsourcing to us. There's a recession happening as well. You know, we spoke about it the other day, Jordan, on our call. So some businesses are having to really think about, you know, maybe higher volumes, whereas some firms are, you know, probably going to have to maybe downsize at some point, depending on what's happening. And that's where we can come in useful as well.
So from the standpoint of, like, if you were sitting down with a law firm owner who was ready to start, I guess, I don't know what the right term is here, like ready to reevaluate how they're communicating with clients, how they have their system set up, where would you start with them?
Okay. Well, many law firms actually come, you know, approach us because they want to improve their quality. And actually, renownedly, a lot of them want to have a robust disaster recovery plan in place. So we just ask them the questions. We find out how many offices they have, what their pain points are. So typically they might say, you know, we've had a couple of complaints of quality, or clients haven't been able to get through. You know, our staff, they're overworked in a way. We want to be able to reduce pressure from them. So we'd ask the questions and then we'd find a solution. So I mentioned about, you know, firms and due diligence, you know, and having disaster recovery in place. And a lot of our clients actually had Moneypenny in the background, and they never used us. And then ironically, actually, when firms would come and visit us, they explore our server rooms, and we'd have to take them to our site, which was 2 or 3 kilometres down the road, to show that we had an extra site if anything were to happen and we couldn't get into our building. And then pandemic hit, and all of our firms put their calls through to us because they'd had that disaster recovery resource in place. So actually, we find out what the client wants, what they need. We offer them a trial. You know, we go through all the paperwork to make sure that the processing and all of the due diligence is up to their requirements, which it most definitely is. And then we put a strategy in place and make a plan, and then run the trial, and then learn from that, really. But our service is more robust now than ever, and that's what the pandemic taught us. And I know I keep referring back to it, but it's really opened our eyes as to how we can move forward and help our clients, really. We've increased productivity as well. So, for example, a firm that uses Teams, and we know there's 270 million users of the Teams platform now, we're actually able as a business to transfer calls via the Teams platform. So if you've got a firm that's got sites all over the US, perhaps in different offices, and they want to centralize everything, we can actually improve efficiencies for the client and the firm by transferring calls, not just to cell phones or direct dials, but over on the Teams platform as well. So it's been a real game changer, actually. So we'll have a full consultation with a client, find out what their pain points are, and then hopefully provide a brilliant solution for them.
And I get it from the standpoint of Moneypenny being a great option for them, or a great solution to some of the problems. But from that law firm owner who knows it's time to start redoing their communication with clients, like, what tips do you have for them? Like, what can they be doing internally to make sure that they are best positioned to bring Moneypenny into that ecosystem?
Okay, so it's really important, I think, in our experience, that we have the backup of in-house teams. So, there's so many different reasons a firm may use us. So some top London firms, for example, might have completely banished their reception and they've got people hosting clients, whereas the calls were a bit of a distraction, so they would come through to Moneypenny. So I think and again, in our experience, it's really important to have all of the teams on board. There can be a little bit of resistance sometimes. Looking at volumes and, going to your provider or looking at what kind of volumes you've got coming in, speaking to all of your departments, asking your clients what their experiences are, again, walking in your customer's shoes. And quite often we might be talking to a firm for many years and there'll be a catalyst. So they might have somebody off sick long term and they're, overrun with calls, or there could be something in the media or the press. All the stuff that's happening in Ukraine at the moment. We've had firms approaching us to see whether or not our live chat can help with frequently asked questions from Ukrainians wanting to know a little bit about different countries. So there's always maybe a catalyst that will bring them to us, and we'll just help them work through it. But I would definitely say having all of the team on board to make the service work. So we'll make it as seamless as we can for the firm, but ultimately we need the backup of the team to make it work, so we can tweak it and make sure it's fitting in, like your business's second home, if you wish.
So I know, like, one of the things we talked about is how you provide that excellent customer journey. So, like, what tips do you have for law firms on that part of it? Like, what can they be doing internally to make sure their customers or their clients get that excellent journey?
So again, asking your customers how they found it when they were trying to contact you. Reevaluating what it's like when somebody does walk into an office. I know we talk about hybrid working, but a lot of firms might already have a presence where you've got clients visiting you. What's that journey like? I would definitely say just asking your clients and your in-house teams how they feel. What's their day like? Could they do with any extra help? What happens when so-and-so goes on lunch? What happens at this time of year when we've got people on holiday? And it goes back to walking in your customer's shoes. And no matter what time of year, no matter what time of day, when anyone contacts that business, they get that wonderful experience when they call up and that red carpet treatment. We've actually seen call volumes and lengths get longer at Moneypenny because I think people now are so used to picking up the phone and they want to deal with a person for complex queries. And I'll give you an example. You've probably experienced them yourself, IVRs, interactive voice responses, and they can be really off-putting. So when a customer calls in and there's lots of options, if that option doesn't get through to a person and that call ends up at a voicemail or not answered, that's a really horrible journey. And then your in-house teams are then having to listen to voicemails to be able to see who's called, and then that takes up their time. And having Moneypenny in place will help improve efficiencies for the whole team. We had 3 attorneys actually working from home, and we set up an IVR for each of them. And this is an example of how it worked really well. Option 1 went to Darren. Option 2 went to Tim. If Tim and Darren weren't available because they were busy, it then routed through to Moneypenny. So they're happy because they get a message. The client's happy because they've spoken with somebody. And the overall experience of anyone contacting that firm is second to none. And next time they call in, we'll recognise who they are as well from our system. So it works really well. So, yeah.
So when it comes time, I mean, we talk a lot about answering the phone, and you're talking about utilizing that to start that great journey. So what tips do you have for firms on that phone answering? Like, what should they be doing, when that phone is picked up to, set the right expectation with clients to make them feel, warm, welcome, etc.
So I think one of the main things is getting that client to the first person the right time and they have a seamless journey. So again, it goes back to phoning a company. You get through, you can't speak to the person you want to, or it goes through to the accounts team, and they're probably not the best equipped person to deal with that call. So I think it's having experts handling the call that haven't got distractions, that can wow that person that's calling in, but then they're getting to speak to the right person, or they're assured that they will get through to the right person, or a message will be passed across. So it's just, ensuring that, everyone gets to the right place the first time and the right people are doing the jobs. We always say that here at Moneypenny. Everyone's got their strengths and weaknesses, and the right people should be doing the right jobs to ensure that the service that's delivered is wonderful. Businesses now are much more open to outsourcing. They're reevaluating their operations. People want less distractions so they can get on with their day jobs. It's definitely on the rise. And if you've got a partner that you trust to do a fantastic job, that you're putting the hands of your business in safe hands with somebody, then that makes all the difference as well.
So along those lines, is there what's the right time for firms to bring in outside help on this, or what's the right balance between internal and external that you found?
Gosh, it depends. So we could be talking to a firm for 2 or 3 years, and there may be somebody on the board that doesn't quite agree with outsourcing, and again, it's not the right time. Or I mentioned before, there could be a catalyst that's the pandemic, for example, or I don't know, you've got a bout of sickness or holidays, or recruitment at the moment and labour, you haven't got enough attorneys, or you've have a receptionist maybe that's worked with you for many years and she's retiring. It could be that your telecoms provider aren't the best, and there's been a break in the service, and that there's issues there, and you want to make sure that your customers or clients are always getting the same answer when they call up, whether it's via your website or the phone. There could be many different catalysts offering quality. So we've actually just centralised a worldwide law firm now. All of their communications come through to us, and we filter the calls to the relevant offices. And their main driver was that they wanted to provide a quality service 24/7, and that was it. So it really does depend on the business and where they're at, whether somebody new's come in and they're shaking things up a little bit. They want to ensure that they've got a robust disaster recovery option in place. There's all sorts of different reasons why a firm might use us.
And are there any internal policies, procedures, structure that a firm can have to make it easier for them to outsource the reception, phone answering type stuff?
Yes and no. Again, we see many different scenarios. So we've worked with firms that might have all of their knowledge within 2 people that have been there for many years, or in a file on their desk, for example. And our job is to be able to get all that information into a knowledge base here, so we can do a fantastic job. And we find that's a bit more old school. So it's almost like getting that information over to us so we can do the most fantastic job we can for that particular firm. So I think communication will, as I've said, give the tools to the firm to ensure that the onboarding process is as seamless as possible. Communicating, again, clients use us for many, many years, so we get to know their staff, we get to know little quirky things about them, and that helps with the communication. If something doesn't quite work out how it was meant to, or it's not quite right, they'll feed back to us. So feedback is really, really important. So it's becoming, again, like I mentioned before, your business's second home. Communicating with the internal teams, finding out their pain points, and making everybody's lives a bit easier.
Awesome. All right. So for you to be able to sit down with, as many law firm owners as possible and share them, these are Stephanie's, 3 to 5 tips on success, what would be the ones that you want to make sure that they are aware of?
Sorry, could you repeat that for me, please?
Sure. So if you were able to sit down with, let's say, every law firm owner, right? We've got 400,000 firms in America. I don't know what the numbers are worldwide. And able to give them these are Stephanie's, 3 to 5 tips of success, right? You all are working with, thousands of firms across the world. There's consistencies in there. What would be the information you want to make sure you could share with as many law firm owners as possible?
Okay, so I'll go back again to walking in your customer's shoes and finding out what the journey is for your clients when they're calling in. I would say being available 24/7 around the clock, and ensuring that all of your channels that people can contact you on, there's always somebody available, and their service that they're getting is a wow service, as I mentioned. I would look and ask internally, are people happy, with the current setup? Are they working hybrid? Do they want their lives to be made easier? How would they prefer their day to go? Would they prefer if a client comes in to be able to have a message that's detailed sent over to them? Do they like to speak to clients on the phone? I would ask for their feedback. And again, asking for clients' feedback, I think, is really, really important. I'd have to have a think maybe at the top five tips and get back to you, Jordan, and rather than off the cuff.
So, I like we've gone back to this a couple of times. I love it. The putting yourself in your client's shoes. Is that a situation where they have you seen firms do anything consistently to get that feedback? Do they host like a focus group and have clients come in? Do they call clients and, ask them questions? Maybe that's something that Moneypenny does. You're checking in with former clients. I don't know. Like, what are some of the ways that they can get that information from, the client feedback?
Yeah, perhaps outbound. So we do offer an outbound service as well, and integrated in that, a lot of firms will ask us whilst we're calling up a client. It might be for a PPI claim or something like that. We will ask what their experience was with us, obviously representing that particular client. So again, there's probably many different internal ways that law firms do it, but definitely in my experience, it's walking in your customer shoes and asking the questions. How they actually do it. That I think there's companies out there that specifically work on, customer service surveys. But yeah, we do outbound for some of those clients as well to get that information.
Any specific best questions, or is it so specific to each firm?
Again, it depends on the firm, what they would like us to ask, really. So yeah, I can't give you a specific right now. It depends on the actual client.
No problem. One of the things you talked about, 24/7 availability, which I think you're so right on. Like, we have become this society of no patience, and trust me, I say that as somebody with no patience. I get it, but I remember as a kid, okay, order this from whatever it was, 6 to 8 weeks, we'll ship you the things. And now Amazon has drones that'll drop them off in 2 hours. From that standpoint though, is that a situation where the law firm needs to be available 24/7, not each individual lawyer, right?
Yeah, so again, I was chatting to a lady the other day, and she's, lives and breathes, like many lawyers do, her work. And she said, Steph, it would be really nice not to have to answer my phone after 8 o'clock. So for example, she will use Moneypenny to handle that call. If it's urgent, then we might send an SMS or something. I think definitely standing out from the crowd and having a live chat facility, for example, on your website ensures that any time of day when anyone does want to contact you, you're wowing them and they can have that conversation, even if somebody will get back to them the next day. And I mentioned to you before about the firm that's outsourced everything to us because they wanted quality service 24/7, and it was as simple as that. So yeah, I think it just depends on the firm and what their requirements are. But it definitely standing out from the crowd, brand awareness, having this wonderful website, working harder, capturing those inquiries, standing out from your competitors, and just wowing all of your customers when they contact you. If I was referred to a firm and I was busy in the daytime, I might be inclined to maybe have a look at their website in an evening. If I've got a sensitive situation and I want to be able to have a chat with somebody, I can have a chat on the live chat platform. And then maybe that's my empowering me, isn't it, to be able to communicate as I wish. So it's kind of empowering your customers. Some people don't like picking up the phone, although many do. It's nice to have the option to have the live chat or the call handling 24 hours a day.
So, and I want to make sure I'm understanding this. So in terms of, I know the live chat on the website, but are you all communicating with clients through text, or is that just internal to the firms to send that SMS?
Yeah, so there's two different ways. So you've got your live chat, which is a real human that is behind that chat box. and we build a knowledge base. So we will ask the relevant questions depending on the inquiry, but put our own personality on it. So empathy or matching the client at the other end and being as efficient as possible. The text I mentioned to you earlier might be that if we move over to the call handling now, if a call comes in, the particular client or attorney might say to us, right, if the call's urgent or after 6 o'clock in the evening, I always want you to send me a text to let me know who's called. Granted, we can get more information on an email than we can a text, but some of
Right.
our clients would prefer that. So the call handling is more of an SMS to let the particular person know who's called, and the live chat is a real person behind the chat box on the website having a conversation with the client.
And I wonder, maybe you know this. I mean, you would know this better than me. If you, I feel like with COVID and with everybody going more digital and virtual, like there's got to be more people interested in that chat box or the communication there versus the phone. Or am I wrong?
Gosh, sorry, could you repeat that again for me, Jordan, please?
Yeah, I just like the upside of the last 2 years, I think, is everybody has gotten a lot more tech forward. You're talking about Teams, we're here on Google Meet, Zoom, etc. So I'm curious if there have been more people interested in the chatbot, interested in the digital communication channels versus the more traditional phone call.
Yes, the answer is yes to some extent. So most clients that actually use the chat on their website don't actually see, say, a reduction in their call volumes. We've tried and tested it. Actually,
Okay.
what it does is it's empowering and then bringing new business in, or for some reason increasing the volume of interactions on a website. However, we did see call volumes, as I mentioned to you, massively fluctuate at the beginning of the pandemic. And then I remember being sat in my kitchen one day at mid-pandemic thinking, gosh, where is everybody? Where's everyone gone? And as a business, we thought, where have our calls gone? And it was whilst people were reevaluating what they were doing. And then we saw them massively go up again. And with the chat, again, I think it's just a new way of communicating. Businesses are much more open. I think, especially in the US, over 70% of people are going to want to see a chat facility on a website. It's definitely, an up and coming way of future proofing your business. And as a business at Moneypenny, our CEO Joanna many years ago said we need to do live chat. It's going to take off, and thank goodness we did, because it's one of our fastest selling services now. Our clients love it. Firms love it. It just kind of gives you a bit of an edge and helps you stand out from your competitors. But also, again, it's all about the customer and giving them that channel to be able to talk if they want to. So it's massively on the up, amongst many other things that we've developed over the last couple of years. The bot I mentioned earlier, I think. So the chat bot was actually developed as a COVID symptom checker bot. So we launched it during the pandemic for our clients to be able to pop on their website, so anyone visiting them could do a symptom checker, so they had a record of that for any of the clients. But then that bot was now developed into a recruitment bot or a triage bot for clients. So actually a firm, if they're looking for new talent and they haven't got internal resource to be able to kind of sift through CVs or take calls from new recruits, we could put a recruitment bot on a legal firm's website, and they can quite simply ask questions and direct that person to a form or a relevant person and send a message. So we're taking away from that headache from recruitment within internal resources. So our COVID bot developed into a recruitment bot and other bots for other people. Then we've got the MS Teams integration, which I mentioned earlier, which is absolutely, so popular at the moment. It's really, really, really been a game changer for us to be able to offer that to our clients. So again, you're sat at your desk, you've got Steph Vaughan-Jones calling you. You don't really want to speak to her, but because you're busy, so you can see here at the bottom of your screen that we're trying to transfer it over to Teams. You can actually decline that call, and then we'll take a message, but we can check when you're available. So they've been a game changer, a couple of those different things we've developed.
What about video chat? Anywhere they can jump into a room and get somebody on the other end?
Yeah, I mean, we do that in everyday life, don't we? But I think that'll definitely be something that our clients are going to want to do a lot more. So I'm sure there's something in the ether there here being developed that we can offer that in the future. I should be careful what I say, but yeah, it's definitely it'll definitely happen one day for sure.
So this is just going to be me venting. I think you'll agree with me. So there was somebody that posted on one of the Facebook groups about their answering service. It was not you all by any means. And they were like, they take these messages and then I call people back and they don't answer. And then they call and they take a message. And I was like, why don't they just set a callback time? Like, to me, I feel like that's a pretty common thing for answering services to do. If they can't get a hold of anybody, all right, then, like, here's a block of time. We'll have them call you back at 3:30, 4 o'clock, whatever it is. Like, am I crazy in that?
No, not at all. It kind of makes sense, really. Some of our clients, again, some of our clients will request that we ask for the best time to call back. Others prefer us to keep it really quite simple, and they don't like us to question the callers too much. It really does depend on the need. But what we'll do at this end, if we notice a client, perhaps they're a 1 or 2 man band, for example, and they are really busy all the time, we would then approach our client and say, look, all of these people are calling back. Can we put a protocol in place to make sure that doesn't happen? Should we ask them the best time to call back, the best number? And then we've got, worldwide firms with multiple offices, and each of their employees has something different. So it's just working with the client really to make sure that the service is as efficient as possible. Our internal system recognizes repeat callers without us having to question them. And it's like red carpet service. So if somebody's called up and they're distressed, for example, and they've called again, we can see why they've called before. So we might be inclined to try and get hold of that attorney or secretary another way if we think that it warrants that. But yeah, let's just keep it simple. Ask for the best time to call back, and then you haven't got that kind of trombone effect of people calling in. But usually, it does depend on the client at their end as well. We can do our job. We can do a wonderful job at greeting the client, getting the information, but it is down to the client to be able to get back to those callers as well in an appropriate time. So in a nutshell, yes, we can.
Yeah, I feel like nothing is as inefficient as phone tag. Like, to me, that is. And then, if there's not a good message, then it's like, okay, we finally are on the same page. What did you call for? Oh, I was asking for an update on this file. Okay, hold on. Let me go pull the file. Like, it's mind-numbing to me, as opposed to the, like, locking in. Okay, Mr. Jones is calling. He's curious to see what the last offer was and what he can do for this. And he expects you to call him back at 3:30. Like, to me, that just makes so much more sense for everybody.
Yeah. I think if a call comes through, and say we've got a firm and they've got 50 employees, for example, as long, say they're on a full outsource and a call comes through, we'll try that particular person. But then they might suggest that if we can't get through to their landline, we try their mobile. Then if they don't answer their mobile, we'll take a message. But we'll know that particular attorney is unavailable all day. So we'll say to the client, look, Jordan's unavailable until 5 o'clock. So you probably won't get a call back until after that. And what time is best for you? Is it tomorrow that's going to be a good time? So we'll just kind of work it so it works for the client and the caller, really. And then we're setting expectations on either side. It is going to happen sometimes, but we'll try our best to help to make sure it doesn't.
Makes total sense. All right, so as we get towards the end, any other topics you want to make sure we cover for our listener and watchers here?
Oh gosh, I think we spoke earlier on. Do you mean with regards to the call handling side of things and the live chats?
I mean, in terms of the conversation today.
Yeah, of course. No, I think we've covered most of it from your questions.
Awesome. All right, so I want to talk about our next episode. Then we'll come back to you for that final takeaway before we call it a day today.
Sure.
So next episode is going to air not next week, but in 2 weeks. We have Matt Netchie on. Matt's going to talk to us about networking, give them something to talk about. Matt, during COVID, wrote I want to call it a fiction book, but it's sort of based upon his grandfather's experience. And so he's going to talk to us about how exciting it was to write the book, how cool it was to get to learn a little, historical fiction, excuse me, but based on some of the stuff his grandfather went through, but then also how that's helped him network, how that's given him something to chat with people about as he continues to build his brand, build his firm, and grow. So if you're interested in that, either writing a nonfiction book or writing a historical fiction book, or just having better networking than the how's the weather conversations, you want to come back on July 14th at 3:45 Eastern Time. July 14th, 3:45 Eastern Time. So about a little over 2 hours after you watch Stephanie's episode in 2 weeks for that. All right, Stephanie. So if somebody's been listening for the last 45 minutes or so and they remember nothing that you said except for this, what would be that biggest piece of advice, that most important thing that you want firm owners to know?
Okay, so I will tell a very short story. Many years ago, my CEO she always wanted a BMW convertible, and she went on about it for months. She went out and bought a car, and she came back with a Mercedes. And I said, Joanna, where's your BMW? And she said, well, they didn't answer the phone, so I ended up going elsewhere. Now, for her, I know she likes a quality service, and I know that she'll buy if she gets that quality service. And I think if BMW would have answered the phone, or even got back to her and maybe not answered the first time, and she'd been able to speak with them, she would have been driving around in that BM. So the moral of the story, I think, is if you want to deliver an amazing service, never miss an opportunity, and always deliver quality, then having an answering service in place could really benefit your business.
It's so funny you tell that story. So I have the same thing. My version though is my cell phone provider. So slightly less expensive than a luxury vehicle, but ultimately I was like, if you want to sell me a phone and you can't even answer for me to buy your cell phone services, why should I expect you to provide good service when I have the phone? Yeah, no, it's true. And listen, in my case, it was a couple $100, a couple $1,000 with the phone. In this case, you're talking, you could be talking 6 figures.
Yeah. And it's not just, it's not just the beginning of the journey, is it? We've had clients using us for 10, 20 years, even 23 years since we first were established. And I think it's the whole journey, and it's growing with your clients, isn't it? And being there through every step of the way. And that's really important. So I think it's the whole client journey. And again, going back to walking in your customer's shoes.
I love it. Yeah, I actually I wrote an article for my local bar, I don't know, 3 years ago now, before COVID, so 3 or 4 years ago, and that was the walk a mile in your client's shoes. And so I talked about it from the standpoint of every time I'm a customer, I think about like, what did I like this experience? Did I not? What can I take from my law firm? What was helpful about it? Which is exactly what you're talking about through the CEO story for the car. All right. So thank you so much for being with us. To everybody watching and listening, we'll have our happy hour coming up on Thursday. And also, we just dropped a redo of our running a referral-based law firm live in our group. So that was right before this chat. So if you're interested in building your firm through referrals, you want to go ahead and check out our presentation that we just did on that. Otherwise, hope to see you on Thursday for our happy hour, and then in 2 weeks for Matt's episode. With that, have a wonderful day.